My Very Last Life, Chapter 10. Thank you, Trump, for ticking one off my bucket list. You know, in a way, in a perverted way, I'm kind of grateful about what happened. And of course, I'm talking about, a couple of hundred idiots storming the Capitol building. I mean, serious idiots storming the Capitol. When was that? 2 days ago, 3 days ago, this week. And it was shocking at first. Of course, it still is shocking. It's incredible. And not only because it happened, because they were, complete idiots who did it. These were not, it was not a coup. It was not like, a planned out military, you have a coup. You have the military is planning this for, years and they occupy the main central communications centrums, and they take over and they lock Congress in a room, but it wasn't that. It was just a bunch of, it was, QAnon. Idiots, armed idiots, but just idiots come out of nowhere and throwing rocks through windows. They're rioting. It's just rioting. That's all it is. And I wonder, I don't know what these guys were thinking. I don't know what Trump was thinking. Was he thinking, oh, maybe this is gonna be a big revolution. The people are going to all, in all parts of the nation are all going to rise up and go to their Capitol buildings and their states and demand that Trump still be the president and overturn. Maybe he really believed it. Maybe he really thought this was going to happen. The stupidity of people, the stupidity of actually intelligent people, because he was clearly intelligent enough to win the election right under Hillary's nose. So Hillary is really intelligent. So if he stole the election from Hillary, then he's smart. I'm not one of these guys who's saying that Trump is stupid, even though he looks to be stupid. I don't think he is. But how could he imagine that? If that's true, if that's really what he thought, if he was, his silence there, sitting there, if he really thought, let's see what happens, maybe the nation is rising up to support me. How could he think that? The only thing that happened were these 200 guys or whatever it was in the Capitol, and they were really too stupid to do anything. How could he think that anything real would happen? It's like, reminds me, this is not, and to a lot of Americans, we think we're so astounded by this happening. We don't realize that it happens all the time in other countries in a bigger way. In Germany a couple of months ago, they stormed the Capitol here, the Parliament building, the Reichstag, because of COVID. There was, people, they didn't want to wear masks, so they went and they said this is the COVID Holocaust, and this is the COVID dictatorship. They call it the COVID dictatorship, Corona dictatorship, because they're the country is using Corona to take away our rights. It's I can't, just stupidity anyway. But so they all gathered in a demonstration, and they breached the line of cops before the Reichstag, and they got up the steps, and I think they got into the Reichstag, or at least up to the beginning of the Reichstag. So they tried to storm the Reichstag. Of course, our guys in Washington got further, but so it does happen in other ways. And if you look at the real danger of something happening, a real rebellion, a real putsch that could actually be successful. This has nothing to do with that. It's nowhere close to a putsch that would have been successful. Almost any other putsch in the world was more serious than this. And if you look at, and again, Germany, of course, is the perfect example for anything that goes wrong with the state. You look at Germany and you find it. You take, for example, the RAF. The RAF was a small group of terrorists in the 70s, 80s, and they did a lot of damage. and they killed people and they kidnapped people and they threw bombs, and it was and they and the final effect of what they did really was that the civil rights of Germans were shrunk down, and the power of the state was of the police was strengthened and increased, so that wouldn't happen again. I think that's usually what happens. Like this, after this, the power of the police in Washington and the power of the state in general will be increased, not decreased, so that it won't happen again. It's usually when something like this happens, the effect is not more freedom, it's less freedom. Of course, because we don't want these idiots storming the Capitol again. But if you look at the RAF in Germany, they were far more serious than this. They lasted for years in the underground and could not be caught. Someone got caught, and another, like a hydra, another head rose up and started throwing bombs again and planting bombs, and they did do some damage. And they were more organized and more serious about overcoming the state than, of course, this QAnon ever could be. And even then, of course, they didn't get close to doing it. There was no way they could do it. I mean, even the QAnon, there was never a danger that QAnon could do any damage at all. The Proud Boys could get anywhere close to overcoming the state. That's nonsense to even think that they could get anywhere close. They really just broke windows and shocked some people, and some people died, and it scared the hell out of, there was a lot of urine in the seats of the Senate that day, I think, under the seats of the Senate, as the Congress people crawled around, fearing for their lives, as once in a while Congress people probably should do. It's probably a healthy thing, but when the RAF did it, they had. I'm no historian about the RAF, but my impression was that they would always do, they would publish manifests, about why we did this and why the state is horrible, and we have to, rebel against the state and establish communism, and a German writer, a great German writer, a Nobel Prize. He won the Nobel, didn't he? I think he did. Heinrich Böll, B-O with an umlaut L-L. He said it best, and he had some kind of a sympathies with these guys. He said best. He said it was 6 against 60 million. So 60 million Germans against 6 terrorists, basically. That was the core of the group. It was actually 4, I think, but and there was a wider range of sub officers. But that was the truth. It's you have a core group of people who are willing to do violence because they're so convinced of their opinion and that they're right in this kind of really arrogant, really self-serving way that only they know what's going on and the truth and what's good and what's bad about the world we live in and all that. And everyone has to listen to them, and because no one will listen to them, they have to be forced to listen to them. So 60 million people have to be forced to listen to and obey these 6 guys with guns and bombs, right? And so they would write long treatises. Ulrike Meinhof, what's her name, wrote these long treatises, and complicated, hard to read, and basically bullshit. She didn't know what she was talking about. She just was repeating Marxist dribble, which it doesn't work. And she was. They were all hoping that there would be some spontaneous uprising, that everyone would realize, yes, this is our chance. They're taking the lead, and we have to follow them and go and occupy the Capitol building. But of course, no one did. It was they were they had what they needed. They had their jobs. They had security. They had their families. They had their apartments. They could pay the rent. They had retirement funds. They had insurance. Why would they rise up against the evil capitalist state when it was really good for everyone? I mean, really, it was really good for everyone. Just like America now, even though everyone complains about it, is really good for everyone. People live well there. Even the people who, and there is poverty. There's more poverty in a little bit. There's like 3% more poverty in America than there is in Germany, but it's still, on average, people live really well. And so why would they rise up? I mean, why QAnon? There's a reason why QAnon is in the dark net or some kind of, because it's only 5 guys or 100 guys or even 1,000 guys doing this. It's maybe there are people who would click on it and say, "Whoa, I like that post," but no one's going to rise up. It was like these guys in this where was this, in Colorado, a nature preserve, or was it Washington or Oregon? Oregon, I think. The Clyde brothers, I forget what their names are. They went in with guns and they took this nature preserve and they said, "Oh, now the world is they're going to rise up," but of course, and all the guys who before on their Facebook posts would say, "Yes, we're with you," and go for it. Those are just guys working at McDonald's playing with their phones. These are not rebels. They want the money and they want to go on vacation and they want to, watch Netflix. They're not going to rise up. How could anyone think, how could Trump really think that, I mean, if this is what he thought, he was sitting there watching this happening in the White House. It took him an hour or so before he got into the front of the camera and said, "This has to stop." And even then, when he said this had to stop, he was, sympathetic to these guys. How could he imagine that this would go good for him? How could he imagine that somehow, that history will look well upon him? It's so obvious that this would not work. And now we have okay, that was a long rant. What I wanted to say was that in a way it's a gift. I'll tell you why. My generation, we grew up in the 70s. We grew up with Nixon. Or Nixon actually was for most of us, our political awareness was just beginning when Nixon when it was resigned. He resigned. When he was chased out of office, basically. And he became, for our generation, he is the epitome of evil, the epitome of a bad president, epitome of everything that's gone wrong. He was, he was this great evil. He was the perfect bad guy. No other bad guy for our generation could ever match him. Bush Jr., doesn't come close. Reagan with his Reaganomics, that was just, maybe it was good, maybe it wasn't good. Well, who knows? He wasn't Nixon. Nixon was the ultimate bad guy, and you could reference him in stories. You could say as bad as Nixon. You could, and Futurama, of course, when Futurama, this great series, when he needed the bad guy, they took Richard Nixon's preserved head in a jar, and he tried to take power again and do all kinds of evil things, and the most evil person. So the people in my generation, the most evil person you can imagine in politics, in American politics, the symbol of everything that's wrong with America was Nixon. But not anymore, and specifically not for this generation. This generation that's growing up now has another Nixon, and it's going to be Trump. And Trump is going to go down, and I don't know if they're going to manage to impeach him, but I kind of hope they do. And if they do, and could they try him for treason? Is that possible? He's the commander of the military? Would they give him a military court-martial for treason? Could they put him in front of a firing line? Who knows? That would be interesting. I would watch that. I would watch that on TV if they put Trump in a firing line for treason. Treason. Even Nixon didn't commit treason. I don't know if you can go there, if you can say that, if you can make an argument for that. But, these things become legends. They become icons. And it could be that Trump is, everyone loses interest in Trump in another 4 years. And maybe in another 4 years we have an even worse president. But taking the past as a pattern, I think what we will have is that he will become an icon of absolute evil, especially for this generation now growing up. And they will make movies about him. They will make cartoons about him. He will be in science fiction, and fantasy novels. He will be the icon of evil, the icon of the downfall of America, the icon of everything that could go wrong. See, the thing is, I've always wanted to look into the future. I mean, I'm going to die in a time that's not too far away. It'll be a few years, I'm sure, I hope. But, and then the worst thing about dying, the worst thing is not knowing how the story continues. Because you have your story, right? Your story starts when you're born and it ends when you die, and that's your story. That's your little novel. That's your book that you write. But there's also the greater story of the world around you, the society that you're part of. This, and I'm part of this. I see, I have a relationship to, German history, German current affairs, American history, American current affairs, to American president, to Biden, to Trump. They're my presidents. I have a relationship to them. I talk about them. I think about them. They instill in me an emotional reaction, and of course they form the world we live in. But if I die tomorrow, my story will end, but that story will not end. It will never end. It will keep going. It will go on and on and on, and I won't know how it ends. It's terrible. It's like going into a movie, after the first hour or the first half hour and leaving an hour before it ends. That's what it's like. You don't see I want to see the whole thing. I can see, looking at a history book, I can see the beginning. I can see what happened before. I know more or less what happened. I would like to have, been there. It would have been interesting, but I can't, that's okay. But I can't see anything about the end. Once I tried, when it became, I guess, in the 80s or 90s, it became popular to make a bucket list, right? The bucket list. And it was even a movie, and the bucket list is always, I want to ride a motor. I want to jump out of an airplane before I die. I want to see Thailand, one of these temples in Thailand. I want to have a threesome with Japanese twins. That's Austin Powers. That's Austin Powers. Threesome with Japanese twins. And these are all these things. And I would, for a long time, I would say, well, okay, where would I like to be? Yes, I would like to. I've never been to Spain. I've been a little bit around Europe, but never to Spain. I'd like to see Spain. Okay, Spain before I die. I want to see that, that temple in Thailand and in the Andes. I would love to see those things. Okay, great. I'd love to see the pyramids. Great. Those are all good things. Jump out of a plane. I don't know if I would jump out of a plane, but, it would be one of those. I kind of tentatively, in my bucket list, I would tentatively write it down, jump out of a plane, and then I would maybe cross it out or it wouldn't, make it to the next bucket list or something. But then at one point I realized I don't care about any of this. I'd like to do it. If I had money to spend, right, I would, and I wanted to go on vacation somewhere, I would love to see, Machu Picchu. I would love it. But that's not what I really want. What I really want is, I think I've said this before, I'm probably repeating myself already in this podcast. What I really want is a personal robot. That's going to happen. It's going to happen in the next, 20, 30, 50 years. It's going to be just like a personal computer in every home. It's going to be a personal robot. It's going to happen. I want to see. Recently, we did an online show with 3 writers, and we talked about and it was for a bank, and it was a Christmas special for a bank, and so I presented these 3 writers and introduced them and what they write about, and we had questions and answers and a little game and things like that. And then one of the questions that one of these writers said was, because it was a bank, it said, "Can you imagine a time when money is no longer used?" And the bank people could not imagine it, and it's difficult to imagine because. What would you use? Would it be Bitcoin? Would it be marks? Would you reach a point in society where everything is so automated, so robotized that you cannot provide jobs for everyone, and so there has to be some kind of a basic universal income. You talk about basic universal income, right? Because otherwise they die, because you cannot give them jobs. The jobs are all taken over by robots. So you have to generate enough taxes and enough wealth so that everyone can kind of live at leisure. It could happen. Will it be that these people then will be given money, or will they just be given points? and you go into a store and you take off the point. You put your phone, your iPhone, you click it, and you have 2 points from 1,000 that you have, and they're gone. And you can, it's something like that. So it is possible to imagine a world without money. There has to be some kind of exchange. There has to be some kind of reward for, accomplishment, for work, for labor, for innovation, whatever. But money as the exchange rate can be replaced by some other thing. What would it be? And these guys, they of course could not imagine it. But now thinking about it, after that I did. At first I couldn't imagine either, but then I realized it is possible. It is thinking that in sometime in the future it will no longer be money. In capitalism, there will still be capitalism in some way because accomplishment and innovation and genius will always be more valued than just menial work. Okay, so that's okay, but it'll be paid differently, and I'd like to know what that is. And I realize, of course, I won't know what it is. I will die before that happens, long before that happens. That's going to take. The personal robot is going to be faster than that. I'm not going to know what happens. I want to see, the colony on Mars. That's going to happen. I probably will not see it, but I want to see it. That's my bucket list. I want to see the future. I want to get a glimpse, like the first proto-personal robot. So at least I have an idea of what it will look like. That first Mac. You know what I mean? If I'd seen that, I would at least have an inkling of what was to come. I wouldn't know exactly. Of course, I wouldn't be able to imagine it, but I would be put in the right direction. I would think, oh, this is going to be something. Something is going to happen here. And I'd like to see that. I'd like to see what's going to happen in the future when I'm gone. I want a preview, a trailer of that part of the movie I'm going to be missing. And Trump gave it to me because he's the Nixon of this generation. From the 70s to now, what are we talking? 40 years. So for the next 40 years, Trump is going to be the bad guy. And all these guys in this generation, they're going to grow up with Trump as the icon of evil. That's going to say something about this generation. So all of a sudden, I feel like I understand this generation. Like I say, oh no, yeah, well, you guys got Trump. I get it. Good luck with that. I can see where that's going. You're gonna, and I got to tell you, you young Trump generation, not much is going to change. When Nixon came, the Vietnam War, everyone said, oh, this is the end of America. America is so horrible. It's a terrible place. And and the conservatives said, hedonism is killing us. And then the leftists said, the conservatives are killing us, destroying us. And this is horrible. We've lost our moral standing and everyone hates us now. And in fact, of course, everyone has always hated us and we've never had moral standing since the very beginning. But that was the complaint with Nixon and Vietnam. And it was like this end of the world feeling, like the end of America, like America was over. And it would never be the same again. But of course, it was not over, and it was the same always. It still does everything it's supposed to do. You look at when Trump came over and told the Europeans that he wanted to get out of NATO. They all said, no, you can't do that. No, who will pay for our military? They don't want to pay for their own military. They need America to pay for the military. That's what they do. We don't have a moral standing, but we're still America. We still do what we're supposed to do in the world. And we did that after Vietnam. And we're still, the mode of the world, we still provide the entertainment at least for the Western world. We still, provide the stock exchange. We still have the medical innovations. It all comes from America, or 70% or something, 75%, something like that. Over 50%. All of it innovations come from America. It's still the internet. When the world needs internet, it's America that makes it, and that's going to be the same for the next 40 years. We're going to say, Trump is forever, America has forever lost its moral standing because of Trump. And everyone thinks horrible, bad of America. And everyone is superior to America, of course, but everyone has always felt superior to America. But everyone is going to feel like that. But in fact, the next internet is going to be from America. and everyone's going to be on it, and everyone's going to complain about it and say, oh, it's just like now with Facebook. They say, oh, this is evil, but they're all going to do it, and they're going to need it, and they're going to want it, and they're going to use it, and it's going to make them rich, and it's going to change the world, and all of that. And that is going to come from America in the next 40 years, just as it did in the last 40 years. And so even though we're all going to hate Trump for the next 40 years and be embarrassed by him and try to justify or not justify him, or, the cool Americans, coming to Europe will say, oh, I hate America too, and Trump is evil, and, I wish I were European, and all the Europeans will love them and, pat them on the back and say, oh, you're one of the good Americans. And the conservatives will always, justify Trump and justify this and justify that, and they will always be the evil, ugly Americans. But in fact, nothing's really going to change. There will be broader changes. China is rising, of course, things like that. But America is still going to be America for a long, long time to come. That's not going to change in the next 40 years. And that realization came to me just today when I was thinking about Trump. If Trump is the next Nixon of the next generation, then we've reached this point where a certain, block of time has been closed, and it will now repeat itself. So from Nixon to Trump is closed, and now we have Trump to another 40 years, Trump plus 40 years until, Fred Johnson comes and just does the worst horrible thing that anyone can imagine, and America is embarrassed of him again. Unless, of course, it happens in 4 years after Biden does something really stupid and we vote for a conservative, extreme right wing, maybe it's the guy with the bear costume and the horns who was, broken into the White House today. Maybe in 4 years he's going to run for president. Maybe it's going to be him. Who knows? Maybe it'll just get worse. But I don't think so. I think Trump is going to be the Nixon, and the next 40 years is going to be much like the last 40 years, except with different changes and different revolutions and different progresses and all things. And if you look at the social differences between our generation and the hippie generation, our generation, or the now generation, not my generation. My generation was the 70s. Okay, but the young generation now, all the Me Too stuff and the climate change and all these things, all these social issues that they're so worried about, those were in the 70s too. That was, sexism, feminism, climate change, environmentalism. That was all invented in the 70s. And it had the same backlash that it did now. It had the same, the conservatives, hated the hippies. And it's the same thing now. And so there's no reason to imagine that it will be that much different in the next 40 years. So, I'm going to check that off my bucket list. I want to see the next Nixon. Check. I saw him. Thank you, Trump. That's it, folks. And thanks for listening. Tune in again next week or tomorrow or whenever it is I do this again. Whatever, I don't know. If you're interested in the things that are really important to me, I write them in books and I put them on videos. Check out my books on Amazon.com or my YouTube channel or my Twitter and Facebook feeds, or subscribe to my newsletter. It's kind of a lot now that I say it like that. Or any of the above, whatever. I hope I can contribute something to your life or to someone's life, anyone's life really, in some way. I appreciate your support, and I wish you all the luck and success and happiness and fulfillment in your life. Take care till next time.